Welcome to World Prism. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The Supreme Court struck down President Trump's sweeping tariff plan, ruling he had overstepped his authority. The decision dismantled a key pillar of his economic agenda and sent shockwaves through Washington. President Trump's response was immediate and furious. He blasted the ruling as treasonous and a stab in the back to his supporters. His posts on Truth Social were raw, unfiltered, and classic Trump. He vowed the fight was far from over. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods, meant to make foreign products more expensive and protect American industries. Supporters say tariffs save jobs, but the reality is more complex. The cost is usually passed down to American businesses and, ultimately, consumers. Tariffs on steel make American cars pricier. Tariffs on Italian tomatoes raise the cost of pizza. Everyday items, from electronics to groceries, get more expensive. Businesses face uncertainty, and families feel the pinch in their budgets. Indian restaurants, for example, have had to raise prices as tariffs drove up the cost of imported spices and rice. Tariffs may sound like high-level policy, but their impact is felt on every price tag and restaurant bill. Trump's plan was bold, aiming to reshape the economic landscape of the United States. He proposed universal tariffs on most imports, a move that generated nearly $200 billion in revenue last year. This was part of his broader strategy to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition. Trump promised to use this substantial revenue to pay down the national debt, which has been a growing concern for many Americans. And, more sensationally, he vowed to send $2,000 checks to most Americans, a promise that captured the public's imagination. The promise electrified his base, creating a wave of enthusiasm and hope. However, the details were vague. There was no clear eligibility criteria, no cost estimate, and no timeline for when these checks would be distributed. Critics quickly labeled it a gimmick, arguing that it was an unrealistic promise designed to win votes rather than a feasible economic policy. Confusion grew when the Treasury Secretary admitted he hadn't discussed the checks with Trump, raising questions about the administration's coordination and planning. In response to the backlash, the administration floated alternatives like tax cuts instead of direct payments. But these ideas failed to generate the same level of excitement. The gap between Trump's promise and reality left many Americans disillusioned, wondering if the checks would ever come, or if they were just another empty campaign promise. Was it a real benefit, or just a campaign slogan? The question lingered in the minds of many voters. The uncertainty surrounding the promise only deepened public skepticism, leaving the nation divided on the feasibility and sincerity of Trump's ambitious economic vision. The Supreme Court's decision wasn't just about economics, it was about the very foundation of American democracy and the separation of powers. At its core, the case forced the justices to confront a fundamental question: who truly holds the authority to reshape the nation's economy? Is it the president, acting alone in the name of emergency, or is it Congress, the body elected to represent the people's will? The answer would have far-reaching consequences for the balance of power in Washington. During oral arguments, justices from both sides of the ideological spectrum, conservative and liberal, expressed deep concern. They worried that if President Trump's use of emergency powers went unchecked, there would be no meaningful limits on what a president could do in the future. The courtroom was tense, as the justices weighed the risk of setting a precedent that could fundamentally alter the balance between the executive and legislative branches. Central to their deliberations was the major questions doctrine. This legal principle holds that only Congress, not the president, can authorize sweeping changes to the nation's economic landscape. The doctrine is designed to ensure that the most significant policy decisions are made by the people's representatives, not by a single individual acting unilaterally. Chief Justice John Roberts made it clear: the power to set tariffs and make major economic decisions lies with Congress. He emphasized that the president cannot simply bypass the legislative process whenever he deems it necessary, no matter how urgent the situation may seem. The court feared that allowing Trump's approach would open the door for any future president to sidestep Congress and enact massive policy shifts on their own. Such a move would undermine the system of checks and balances that has defined American government for centuries. Justice Neil Gorsuch, in particular, raised a critical point. He warned that if the court allowed this logic to stand, future presidents could invoke emergency powers for virtually any reason, even for emergencies that have nothing to do with the original intent of the law. This, he argued, would set a dangerous precedent and erode the boundaries that keep presidential power in check. In the end, The court ruled that the law President Trump relied on was never meant to be a blank check for overhauling trade policy. It was designed for targeted specific crises, not for sweeping unilateral changes that could reshape the entire economy. By striking down the plan, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the fundamental limits on presidential power. The decision sent a clear message. Even in times of crisis, the president must respect the role of Congress and the rule of law. Ultimately, the court reminded the nation that Congress, not the White House, must make the country's biggest economic decisions. This is how democracy is preserved and how the voices of the people are heard. With this ruling, the Supreme Court drew a clear line in the sand, protecting the delicate balance of power that defines the American system of government. Tariffs hit businesses and families hard, often in ways that aren't obvious at first. Honda, for example, saw profits plunge as tariffs drove up the cost of imported parts, leading to higher car prices for consumers. Small businesses, like Indian restaurants, faced soaring costs for essential ingredients, forcing them to raise menu prices or risk going under. The much-hyped $2,000 dividend check never materialized. The Supreme Court's ruling cut off the tariff revenue, leaving families with higher prices, but no compensation. Hopes for relief turned to disappointment and confusion. The economic pain remained, but the promised benefits vanished. The real-world impact of tariffs was felt everywhere, from car showrooms to dinner plates. The Supreme Court's decision unleashed chaos and confusion. The ruling, which many had anticipated with bated breath, sent shockwaves through the nation. People from all walks of life were left grappling with the immediate and long-term implications. Hundreds of billions in tariff revenue had already been collected. Should it be refunded? The question looms large over the Treasury Department, which now faces the daunting task of determining the fate of these funds. The financial stakes are enormous, and the pressure is mounting. Businesses that paid the tariffs want their money back, but tracing who deserves refunds is a logistical nightmare. The complexity of the situation is staggering, with countless transactions to review and verify. Many companies are left in limbo, unsure of their financial future. The costs were often passed down to consumers, making it nearly impossible to untangle. Shoppers are feeling the pinch, and families are struggling to make ends meet. The ripple effects of the ruling are being felt in households across the country. Lawsuits are inevitable, and the Treasury faces years of legal and financial headaches. The courtroom battles will be fierce, with high stakes for all involved. Legal experts predict a protracted fight that could drag on for years. Businesses, having adapted to the tariffs, now face a sudden policy vacuum. The uncertainty is crippling, with many companies unsure of how to proceed. The economic landscape has shifted dramatically, and the path forward is unclear. Should they lower prices, move production, or wait for new rules? The decision-making process is fraught with risk, and the stakes are incredibly high. Executives are scrambling to develop strategies that will keep their businesses afloat. Ordinary people wonder if prices will drop, but answers are scarce. The uncertainty is palpable, and the lack of clear information is frustrating for consumers. Many are left wondering how this ruling will impact their daily lives. The political fallout is just as intense. Trump's defeat has energized both supporters and opponents. The ruling has become a flashpoint in an already polarized political climate, with both sides digging in their heels. The ruling deepened divisions, turning a legal fight into a new front in America's culture wars. The nation is more divided than ever, and the path to reconciliation seems increasingly elusive. The messy aftermath of the ruling will be felt for years to come. What's next? Trump won't back down. He's already seeking new legal avenues for tariffs. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act could be his next move, but it would spark more lawsuits. Working with Congress is unlikely in today's polarized climate, so unilateral action is probable. Businesses, courts, and consumers are all bracing for more uncertainty. Will prices fall, or will new tariffs replace the old ones? The Supreme Court settled one question but opened many more. The battle over America's trade policy and presidential power is far from over. This was just one round in a much larger war for the future of the U.S. economy.